phenomenon of single motherhood for years and years and years, and that the outcomes for children of single mothers tend to be terrible in comparison to the outcomes of children without them.
Right.
Can you just acknowledge that that is true?
Just answer the question.
So I think what you're talking about are studies.
I'm asking a question. Don't run from the question. Yes or no? I want you to acknowledge with a yes or no, then a qualifier. Yes or no, isn't it true that outcomes for children when they're raised by single mothers tend to be worse than those with a mother and a father in the house? Yes or no, then give me your answer.
Drink the coffee, it'll make you feel better.
49-year-old actress Charlize Theron just recently appeared on the Call Her Daddy podcast titled I Don't Need a Man. And that's not all they talked about. She also spent some time bragging about how she's banging 26-year-old men. This has turned into a viral topic, mainly because she spoke about how she pretty much doesn't need a man to raise her children. In fact, she doesn't care how that will affect her children. Now, with the thumbnail title like I Don't Need a Man, it's not hard to guess that there were some ridiculous things Piers said on this podcast, but we also can't forget this is Call Her Daddy. Now, for those of you who don't know much about the Call Her Daddy podcast, the podcast is actually hosted by Alexandra Cooper, this chick, and this is the type of insane things that go on here.
My boyfriend has a very big issue with my past. He found my list of people I have been with, and he was pissed. He actually broke up with me initially, but after a while, we got back together. The issue now is I feel like he is constantly making judgmental comments about me being easy or having a high body count. He always says he's just kidding, but how can I get him to stop caring that I was with guys before him? I feel like every single girl has a list of the guys she's ever been with. Like,
you see what I mean? Why would you keep a list of all the guys that have clapped your cheeks and somehow save that in your notes app on your phone? No man wants to see that. And no, he's never going to get over that. Guys understand that you're most likely not a virgin. Most guys, they get it. They accept it. But to actually see a list of the 50 or 100 or 30, whatever number it is, amount of men that he saw in that phone, that would keep any man with self-respect up at night.
how fun. I remember the men that have been inside of me, and I have a husband, and that's okay. This sounds like a really insecure or possessive man. We've all lived, we've all had a good time, and if anything, everyone we've been with prior to has helped us become the person we are today. I think.
So you guys get the idea. In this video, I wanted to react to Piers Morgan and the conversation they had about this exact podcast.
The latest episode of Call Her Daddy features a lengthy interview with Oscar-winning actress Charlize Theron, entitled I Don't Need a Man. And in it, Miss Theron explains how she reacts to people criticizing her for being a single mum.
I want to just look at them and just be like, do you know how fucking great it is to live exactly how I want to live, to experience motherhood exactly how I wanted to experience it? And I know the next thing they say is like, well, that's not fair on your kids. Can I tell you something? That will be their story to tell. I can't tell you. I can only tell you that this is the best way that I know how to be a mother to them. And maybe they'll grow up and tell their story, and I will respect that.
Well, she also wanted audiences to know how liberating it is for her children not to have a father.
I love that I don't have to run every thing by a guy. I love that I don't have to, well, oh my God, co-parent. I love that I don't have to do any of that stuff. And my children, we joke, listen, I think you can tell, this is how I raise my kids.
Yes.
Right? We don't hide this shit.
But don't worry, while Charlize doesn't think husband or father is important in life, she hasn't given up on men altogether.
I found this freedom in my 40s where I'm like, oh my God. So I just want to say this in perspective. I've probably had 3 one-night stands in my entire life.
Okay.
But I did
Comment down below if you believe that.
just recently a 26-year-old, and it was really amazing.
Yes.
And I've never done that. And I was like, oh, this is great. Okay.
Let me just say that 26-year-old is the luckiest man walking on this goddamn planet. He's walking different today, knowing, oh my God.
He for sure is not, but thank you.
No, he is.
Well, the episode's been viewed by nearly 1 million people so far. Reaction has been divided between those who celebrate Charlize as, quote, a powerful epitome of a strong woman fighting against the evil patriarchy, and others who, in equally strident language, view the whole episode as yet another example of modern feminist media denigrating the role of men at every given opportunity. All of which makes it a good starting point for a lively debate. Well, joining me for this battle of the sexes, host of the Crucible podcast, Andrew Wilson, who I could imagine was visibly shuddering as he listened to those clips. Jedediah Byler, who's the host of the Jedediah Byler Show, commentator and author of The Case for Cancel Culture, Ernest Owens, and the editor of the User Mag newsletter, Taylor Lorenz. Well, welcome to all of you. And Jedediah, welcome to you especially because you're making your uncensored debut. We always like...
Is that a man?
Like debutantes. I'm always astonished.
Thank you very much, Piers.
Always astonished when people come back for more. But thank God they do. And thank God Andrew Wilson does. Andrew, your thoughts on Charlize Theron? She doesn't need a man. She likes banging 26-year-olds when she feels like it.
Right.
You don't need fathers in life. You just need a strong, badass woman.
Well, you know, it's really funny. The reason nobody cares really very much when a 40-year-old attractive woman has sex with some random young man is because it's not impressive. It's impressive when men can bang young women because most men can't bang young women, but most older women can bang young men.
Facts.
So it's just not an impressive accomplishment. Of course, these are the same women who will screech because, Leonardo DiCaprio decides that he wants to change up, at 25 years old, any of the broads he has hanging around. But this is not an impressive accomplishment. All a woman needs to do to get laid is go somewhere where there's men and offer it up. It's not the case for men. So it's an unimpressive accomplishment on its face.
Yeah.
As to the rest of what she's saying, this is just normal tripe, right? Her kids are the ones who are going to get punished. They're always the ones who get punished. We can look at the data for outcomes on children who are raised in single mother homes. It's
Right.
not good.
Right.
It's not good for their mental health. It's not. And by the way, the rates of abuse from having strange men around skyrocket. Terrible idea. And it's exactly the wrong kind of propaganda to be pushing.
Conversation over. Shout out to Andrew Wilson. I really like how he didn't beat around the bush and he got straight to it. By the way, on one of the last Piers Morgan episodes, somebody was like, there's no way she doesn't know who Andrew is. I'm ashamed to admit that I did not know him as well as I probably should have. The more I went to go listen to more of his content, I was like, okay, I get why one of my subscribers would say something like that.
All right, Taylor Lorenz, isn't it just a factual reality of life that women are predominantly happier with a man by their side and children are predominantly better off in life with a present father?
That's it.
I think, listen, children are better off in life when they have a loving household, and not all of those households have fathers. I mean, there are lesbian parents, there are, different types of arrangements. I think it's important for kids to have different figures in their life who they can look up to. I think it's really important to expose kids to all different types of figures, but that doesn't have to be, like a man, a cisgender man that's standing around all the time. There's plenty of terrible fathers out there too. So,
oh man, she started off with the cisgender where she lost everybody.
I think it's great that the child is growing up in a loving household, and hopefully, she'll expose the child to lots of different types.
Yeah, but can you acknowledge that we have now been studying this phenomenon of single motherhood for years and years and years, and that the outcomes for children of single mothers tend to be terrible in comparison to the outcomes of children without them? Right. Can you just acknowledge that that is true?
Just answer the question.
So I think what you're talking about are studies.
I'm asking a question. Don't run from the question. Yes or no? I want you to acknowledge with a yes or no, then a qualifier. Yes or no? Isn't it true that outcomes for children when they're raised by single mothers tend to be worse than those with a mother and a father in the house? Yes or no? Then give me your answer.
So I'd love to respond if you stop talking over me.
Go ahead.
Anyway, most single mothers are not Charlize Theron with millions and millions and millions of dollars. So when you look at studies like that, a lot of it has to do with the economic opportunities that a lot of single mothers have. Women make less than men as a whole. They're subject to more sexism and discrimination. So it can often be more challenging for them to raise a child alone.
So the answer is yes?
No, the answer is Charlize Theron.
It sounds like you just said that the answer.
I think people are so fed up with the political jargon talking around the subject. The answer is yes. Do kids fare off better when they have both parents? Anybody who's going to try and avoid answering that question straightforward with the yes or no, because it's backed by data, is literally not in touch with reality or has been extremely disingenuous. Do you know that roughly 2 million people get married in the U.S. every single year? And out of those 2 million people who get married, 600,000 wish they had this. And what is this? It's a prenuptial agreement. No, a lot of people have never actually seen a prenup in real life. Now, to put that in perspective, we're talking about a football stadium packed with married people who regret not signing a prenup. A part of me does understand why so many future husbands make the mistake of not getting a prenuptial agreement, right? A lot of people think only rich people get prenups, and the process is often very complicated and expensive. In fact, when I got my prenup, I wish I had guidance on how to choose the right attorney, how to avoid costly mistakes, and also just how to walk into a conversation, a legal conversation, feeling confident. That's why I decided to create fathershaverights.com. If you need a prenup but don't know where to start, our step-by-step guide can help. Get the questions every future husband asks answered by expert attorney James Sexton and the lead attorney before you sign your prenup. At fathershaverights.com, we've simplified the entire process for just the cost of a couple of coffee dates. No need to just take my word for it. You can check out hundreds of reviews of husbands who've prepared for their prenups the right way. Don't wait. Timing is everything when it comes to prenups. Hit the link pinned to the top of the comment section and access your prenup guide today, and you get 25% off. All right, guys, that's it. Let's get back into the video.
The answer, according to you just now, is yes.
No, any single
and then you just
parent,
make excuses for it. You're like, yes, but
Taylor, this is
because
not
women
going
are
on right
oppressed.
now. This is so weird.
You're
like shouting
Taylor,
at me.
can I jump
Do you know,
in here,
well, do
Piers?
you know what it
Yeah,
is?
okay, let's bring,
Shouting at
hang
you,
on,
I'm
time
talking
out. Let's bring in Jedediah.
Taylor, this is not rocket science. First of all, you lost me at cis male. You just meet a guy, just a man, right? We don't need all these terms, these nonsensical, ridiculous terms that, modern leftists have come up with. It's just a man. Children do better when there is a mom and there is a dad. And the reason is that men and women are completely different. They bring very different things to the table.
Right.
And children need the role model of a mom and a dad, not just people around. Sure, you can have aunts, you can have uncles, you can have friends, but we're talking about the two individuals that are raising children. And let me just ask you this.
Lesbians have the highest levels of divorce at 70% and the highest levels of DV. These people are out of their minds, bro. They're crazy.
Question. Wait, I'm not done yet. You complained that Andrew interrupted you and now you just interrupted me. I'm not done yet. Charlize Theron, you're right. She is rich. She has a ton of money. But what example do you think she's sending to young women everywhere that this is somehow empowering, that you should strive, by the way, you should strive to be the single mom because you don't have to deal with a guy. You don't have to answer to a man. Oh, isn't that so wonderful? And guess who'll pay the price? My kid. She even says, my kids can tell their story.
Right.
How unbelievably selfish of her to say, my children will one day to get to tell a story that they had no father because I decided that I just wanted to do this myself, me, myself, and my money. Is that the message that we should be sending to young women?
They're lesbian. They shouldn't be able to raise children. You need a man. What about women that raise children?
We're not talking about, Taylor, no one said what should be allowed. I'm not talking about.
Well, tell you what I find strange. What I find strange is I know Charlize a bit when she was dating Sean Penn, and thought she was very nice, but she was always very elegant. If you interviewed her, her whole thing was high-end, elegant, all the highest-end advertising and so on. And then you see her there in this podcast, and she's like effing and blinding, talking about banging 26-year-olds. Very, very different, Ernest, to the Charlize Theron I thought I knew.
Right.
I'm not saying it's good, bad, or whatever, but I do wonder if it was a male movie star sitting on a sofa, brazenly boasting about banging 26-year-olds. How old is Charlize? 50. If a 50-year-old male star.
Wow, she's 50. I thought she was in her late 40s, but I guess she's 50 years old. They would eat that man alive.
Was boasting about banging 26-year-old girls, right? And he was boasting about not needing a woman in his life, not needing a mother, all these kind of things. But in reverse, I don't think you'd be approving of this, Ernest.
I mean, for starters, I'm all for if it's about consent and respect. They do it all the time. A lot of older men do it all the time on media, on social media, in interviews. It's not actually an uncommon thing. I think the reason why there's a lot of actual shock and awe over Charlize Theron because a lot of women actually her age don't feel the liberty to do that on a public-facing platform. And so that's why we're talking about her.
Women don't feel like they have the liberty to exercise their sexual freedom. Come on, man. We might be living in the time of the largest demographic, women who belong to the night, with body counts so high they take them to the grave. that they've ever been in history. I think we're living in that time. So that's such a ridiculous statement.
We don't talk about men who do it often on here because it's so norm. I mean, if you look at who's in politics currently right now, they were just doing it their entire career before they got to the White House. So it's not that much of a shock. You know, there's a guy who got elected president.
Yeah, and you screamed bloody murder about it.
And got elected. And so.
And you screamed bloody murder about it. What are you talking about? Hang on. You liberals said that was the most horrible thing. He was a terrible role model. How could he? And here's Charlize Theron is saying this, and you're like, she's an empowered boss babe, Andrew. Come on.
See, if I talk over him, Piers would tell me to be quiet. And
we're done talking, dude. We're done talking.
Come on,
no, I wasn't done talking. Actually, can I actually?
Oh, man.
You can, Ernest. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So what I was getting at is that there is a double standard. And I think, honestly, like I said before, I don't know what liberal he's talking about, but I was not a liberal that said that Trump talking about grab her by the pussy was the worst thing he ever said, because there's a lot of other things he has said that I believe is far worse and actually should cause more attention. But that being said, I just feel like the only reason why we're talking about it is because women like Charlize Theron often don't do this on a normal. So it feels abnormal, and that's why we're discussing it.
Okay,
Ernest,
Andrew.
Why do these libs talk out of both sides of their mouth? I mean, look at it. She refused to acknowledge the outcomes for single moms. Pivots immediately.
Let's be clear.
The woman that sounds like not just a lib, but an extreme lib, doesn't want to be called liberal.
No.
Immediately.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Look, I'm sorry. If you have progressive talking points, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, I call it a duck. So the thing is, right, the libs on the panel very clearly, right, she evades the answer, refuses to give us the answer of if outcomes for children of single moms are worse, refuses, gives us a bunch of qualifiers proving that they are, still refuses to do it. He says, well, this is so commonplace for men. Look at the sexual deviant that we have in the White House, and says, but I'm not throwing a fit about that. I'm not throwing a fit about that, though. Yeah, they did throw a fit about it.
Ineffective discussion. This man is just over everyone.
You have to understand that when I see Jedediah, and I've seen her before. She came up, I think, through the PBD podcast. I don't know if she's doing her own thing right now, but I assume that also, Andrew, they commentate on real social issues, right? They look at culture and they're actually in the trenches of a reality, observable reality. They know what feminist modern women believe. They understand the things that they value, and they do not value cutting back on that sexual liberation. They do not value fathers in homes, and they definitely do not value men today, right, in general. And then you have these two other guests over here who are talking about cis man, and they live in a fantasy. They don't live in reality. They're the same people who'll be like, could you tell me if that's a man or a woman? Well, let's ask them how they feel. They don't base their values in reality. They base their values in feelings. If you feel like a woman, then you are a woman. If you feel like you're a man, then you are a man. Studies don't mean anything because F that. And you're essentially just talking to two crazy people.
Like, he's very emotional.
It's an ineffective discussion.
Now.
I would just like you to actually answer the questions I ask you. Why can't you people ever do that?
I have a question for Ernest. Ernest, you said there was. Hold on a second, guys. Ernest, you said there was a double standard. What are you, in your view, where is the double standard? Because I see a double standard here, but I think we see a different double standard.
Cool. So what I was saying was the double standard reaction, right? There is a lot of reaction because of what Charlize Theron said. I'm saying that I understand where that is coming from because we don't often see women like Charlize Theron on these platforms talking about their sexuality in this way.
But it's celebrated. Ernest, that's not true. But here's the difference. Every time, hold on a second. Every time a man says, a guy can't even say that he prefers younger women. Right. He can't even say, well, you know what? I prefer younger women because of their fertility is better, because they're in their peak attractiveness, because I want to have a bunch of kids and it gives me more time, without getting completely trashed.
Let's be clear. Hang on. Let's be clear. If Brad Pitt came out with an interview tomorrow on Uncensored, and I hope he does. If you're watching Brad, my show is always available to you. But if he was, and he said, do you know what? Just only last week, I had the most unbelievable sex with a hot 26-year-old, right? Do you think the reaction, Ernest, would have been widespread applause for this guy? Or would it have been, you dirty old man? No. I'm not saying that I feel that about Charlize Theron. I'm just saying that's the double standard.
You see, this is ridiculous. What's ridiculous is when you're having conversations with people who aren't in touch with reality, you have to ask ridiculous questions. We know the answer would be women would say, why can't men date women their age? Oh, he's a predator. He wants to take advantage. We know this. But when you introduce people who are afraid to speak what's true, what they know is true, then this conversation turns into asking ridiculous questions.
Right? Leo DiCaprio gets mocked at every award show because he dates women half his age. Now it's Charlize Theron. Everyone's like, oh, this is amazing.
Piers,
a man would have been called a groomer.
I can give you an example where that backfired. So let me be very clear. So let me give you a good example of this, actually. First of all, it's if it's a pattern, right? Charlize Theron is not doing this on the regular. That's why this is a big news story. She's been mostly in long-term relationships. She does not have a habit of doing this. Leonardo DiCaprio's entire a lot of his romantic history has been this pattern, which has become a running joke. The first couple of years he did it, no one cared. But it's been decades, like over
Ernest,
10 years.
That's not why it's a news story.
What does that have to do with anything?
That's your opinion.
First of all, both of those things have been covered in the news. But the reason, what Piers is getting at, I think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, this is being celebrated. Do you understand the difference? Modern feminism has made it so that we now celebrate that Charlize Theron. And by the way, I don't give a lick, honestly. It's consensual. I don't care if she sleeps with a 26-year-old.
And by the way, there are a lot of 26-year-old men who will be absolutely thrilled that she's on the cougar market.
That's correct.
I want to go back to what was said by this guest right here. Who cares? Like, think of that argument. Oh, if it's a pattern of you being attracted to younger people who are adults, right? A 26-year-old man or a 26-year-old woman. If you're a single older woman who likes dating single young men, if it's a pattern, then you're a predator. Then you're wrong. That's a ridiculous statement. That's why I talk about Drea. If you don't know who Drea is, she's like a 40-year-old model, and she currently is dating and also had a child by a 23-year-old NBA player. He's an idiot. That's how I view that. And any man who falls for that is also making a very bad decision. Now, there are some of you who may say, Drea is a predator. I don't necessarily think so. What I do think is interesting is if the genders were reversed, women would fight tooth and nail to try to convince the whole world that that man is a predator. And I don't think that's the case either, because that same 23-year-old woman or that 19-year-old girl, women would sit there and praise the moment they start doing adult content or open an OnlyFans account. Drink the coffee.
Drink the coffee. It'll make you feel better.
I mean,
right.
There will be.
And I don't care either. We can agree there. But I'm smart enough to acknowledge that she is being celebrated for that action, whereas a Leonardo DiCaprio or the average guy, for that matter, just saying, hey, I prefer a 22-year-old to a 32-year-old, will get destroyed in every possible
you know what? I actually have no problem with what she said about a 26-year-old. That's entirely down to her. She's a single woman. She can have sex with who the hell she likes if it's consenting an adult. I do, though, have a problem with, and Andrew was, I think, right about this. In a way, what she's saying is all your quaint ideas about you need a bloke around, you need a father, you need a husband, that's all bullshit. Look at me. I'm proof it's all great. I don't believe women when they say that. I don't believe men when they say the same thing. You know, I just think that actually the ideal is that you have a man and woman around kids and they bring them up together. And if that isn't possible...
This chick is obsessed with lesbian couples. She's like, what about two women? What about two women? They fare off the worst. They're the most dangerous in relationships together. And if they're a danger to each other in relationships, they are a danger to children. This obsession with, what about two women? What about two women? For as much as she believes or endorses lesbian couples raising children, she should know that.
And it doesn't work out. Okay, you make it work. But to actually try and pretend this is actually utopia and this is the best possible thing for your kids, I don't think that's true. And I say that as a divorcee myself. I don't think this is ever actually the ideal, but you make it work as best you can.
Right.
I want to switch gears.
All right, and just to add on, you can. There's so much out there, so much material that talks about why fathers are important, down to a chemical level, especially in those early childs of that baby. Top comment here, reads Charlize Theron adopted 2 children, and they are both trans now. What are the odds? she's already setting those two young children up for failure. That is crazy. This next commenter says, imagine a 50-year-old Leonardo DiCaprio saying, yes, I intentionally raised my kids without a mother, because can you imagine having to listen to some girl every single time you want to make a decision? That is so true. And yes, the kids, in parentheses, who are trans and clearly mentally unwell, in the case of Charlize Theron, might not be well, but whatever. This is the way I'm going to do it. And they can tell their stories when they are older. She pretty much said, if we're going to be honest, she prioritizes herself before her kids. And if it sucks for them, that's their story. She doesn't care, which is extremely selfish. Goes on to say, oh, by the way, I pumped and dumped a 26-year-old girl the other day, and it was amazing. With the feminists praising Charlize Theron and encouraging this behavior, do the same if a man did it? No, of course not. This is something which has become very common in Western society, where women take the behavior and traits of sleazy men, which used to be looked down upon, and now do those very same things and glory in them. These chicks, most of them belong to the streets. They are for the streets. Somebody else here says, Piers has Andrew on to say the things he is thinking but can't. It's hilarious. Another person here added, trust not a woman when she weeps, for it is her nature to weep when she wants her will. Socrates' final comment says, as soon as Taylor said cisgender man, I knew what time it was. Hey guys, as always, I appreciate you for checking out yet another episode of The Coffee Pod. To my currently engaged or soon to be married men, if you need a prenup and would like a guide that shows you how to get a solid and legally binding prenuptial agreement, hit the link pinned to the top of the comment section and access your guide at fathershaverights.com today.